Okay, let's do another one of my understanding the elements within Elementor. Today we're going to be looking at image. It's a pretty simple one and you can't really go wrong with it. But let's just pull over an image and look at the styles, styling and advanced and just see what can we learn about it. Okay, so we're in Elementor. We're just going to add in a section. In fact, what we'll do is we'll do one with 2 columns, okay? And I'm just going to go to the advanced for the section, and I'm just going to put about 150 pixel for the top and bottom margins, just so it's in the middle of the page. Let's go over to the widgets, and we're going to pull over image. And obviously we just get the grey little dummy image there, nothing there to do. We then click over here and we're just going to pick an image. So let's go for this picture here of a desk, a dark grey desk, and it's a pretty wide image at the moment, okay? And I tend to always put full. Even if the image is small, I always go for full. And because I have found that if I start to pick different sizes, when I'm viewing it on a large screen or whatever, I start to notice some pixels, or I start to notice blurriness in the image, and it just doesn't always look good. So I will always pick full. This is the point where you could add a link. So you might want to say, if anyone clicks on this image, is it just going to open the picture, normally in Lightbox or something, or is it going to go to another page? It might be a page outside of your website, it might be a page within your website, or it might be, you know, something that's not in your menu. You got to click the image to get there. Maybe it leads you to a freebie or a course or just a video. I don't know, anything like that. We're going to leave it as none for now. Now I'm going to go over to style, and this is where you really have the control. So if you were to put it as 100, okay, it is going to be 100% of the column. If I change that to be 50, it is now 50% of the column. Does that make sense? But what you might want to do, though, is you might decide that regardless of the size of the screen, because if you have 100 and we're now viewing it on a 42-inch monitor, it's going to be a lot bigger. But maybe, for whatever reason, you want to be very specific on the size of that, and you decide, I don't want that image to ever be more than, say, 300 pixels in width. And what I would recommend, though, is that if you do that, make sure you replicate whatever values do in the width with the max width as well. Because if you don't do that, you'll be viewing it on another machine, and if you've set your logo to be a particular size, like what we have here at the moment, if you start to when your screen size chops and changes or gets bigger or smaller, what you don't want is your logo to suddenly go from here to like that. Because maybe you've got your menu and your other icons and other features and whatever all built in a particular certain way, and what you don't want is your image does that and they're still the same size, because it will just look very, very odd. You know, and when I first started using Elementor, I did not set my widths and I regretted it, and I always do that now. What you could also do, I just want to get rid of these values. Let's just get rid of that, get rid of that. You could also set the height as well. So I could start to shrink the height a little bit or increase the height like this. And the trouble is, though, is that sometimes if you've got a really big image and you have the height is too small, it will be compressed, squashed down. If you have a medium-ish sized image and you start to make it bigger, it will start to extend out like what it's doing here right now. Can you see that? We now have a very wide angled keyboard. Wow, looks quite cool, wouldn't it? You'd be able to not click the wrong buttons. But what you want to do, though, is when you are using the height option, and if you start to notice any distortion, use the object fit and set it to a cover. I mean, if you go to contain, there was no real point using the height, in my opinion, there. But you could go for the cover option, just so it kind of puts everything back in proportion. To be honest, if you're going to do that, you might as well have set the image as a column background or a section background. So again, with images, you know, I rarely use the height. I use the width and the max width to set it most commonly. You can now also set the opacity. So you might have some text maybe that you've brought in from another column maybe, and you're now overlapping them. or another little feature, another element. What you could also do though is, let's just put the opacity back to 1. You could also do hover. So what I could do is I could say that when you hover over it, I'm going to put the brightness up, put the contrast up. We're going to just increase the colors as well. Not doing anything. Why is it not doing? There you go. Sorry. There we go. So when I hover over it, that was really silly, wasn't it? Of course it's not doing anything. I haven't hovered over the image. Let's just put that back again. So let's just drop the brightness a bit and we'll give it a bit of a purple shade. So look, when you hover over it, the image changes. Again, don't go super crazy over this. So if you've got an image where you're showcasing property or some landscape or someone, it might be a nicely visible image, and then when you hover over it, slightly brightens up a bit, just to kind of highlight it a bit more. So that's one of the features you could go for. I'm just going to click the anti-clockwise arrow, which is also the symbol for undo, and it's just going to undo that hover effect there. You can also change the things as well. So for instance, if we go for grow, when I hover over it, it does that. That can be annoying if you've got another image or text in another column beside it, because it's now going to suddenly overlap it. There are CSS codes you can use. There are other plugins you can use as well, where they come with that feature where it will zoom in or out when you hover over it, but it does not cross out of its border, or it's limited to that area. There is codes you can use for that. We're not covering that here, just going over the styling of images. Okay, and of course, let's just put that back to, let's just put that back, put that as a 0. So, sorry, there we go, got it. So just hit the X to get it to none. We can also add a border. When you click the solid, you have different options, double dotted, dashed, groove. We'll go with solid, and I'm going to put a color red, and I'm going to say the width of that all the way around is 10. Pretty simple that. We can also do a border radius, so I'm going to go with 50, so we get a bit of a round. I mean, don't forget, you can make it very, very round. And if you make your column a certain width, you can make a perfect circle. So it's one of the ways of how we sometimes do, that was rubbish because I did it the wrong way around. But what you could do is if you just change the width of this, so we have it as, say, a 20 or something, and then we modify the width of it so it fits a proper circle, you can have a proper circle. Put that to 100. Put that back to 100. Come on. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So we could do that. Make it a circle. What we can also do is we can also remove the width, not the width, the border. So we remove the border and we still have a circular or a curved image there. You don't have to have the border. I just wanted to show you. You can have the border as a square or curved or vice versa. What you could also do is a box shadow. And I'm just going to pick a dark color so it stands out a bit more. Okay. And I'm just going to decrease the blur a little bit. And I'm just going to show you that, look, if you increase the number, it increases the shadow below. If you increase the horizontal, it pushes it to the right. So we are now down to the right. If I go the other way, so I'm now negative, I'm to the left. And if I change my vertical to a negative, it's now up and left. So you can have a bit of a play with what kind of shadow effect and how far you want it. Whenever I'm doing this, I tend to go between 2 and 5 when I'm doing the numbers, you know, between that range, because I just want to have the shadow, but not like right over there, because it would just look very odd. You want to undo that, you can, and it's totally gone now. Let's now go to the advanced. So you will find though that, you know, when you zero the margin and padding, it doesn't really do much to the image. It's not like text or headers where they will suddenly shoot to the edge of the page or the column. It doesn't really do much over here. But this is where, if you have got, say, another column or another section, not column, a section above or below, this is where you can start to mess around with how does that image sit within the column. So right now, this image is going to be about 90 pixels above the section, okay? And if I was to remove that minus, so we're now 90, what we're now doing is basically I've just pushed it to be 90 pixels away from the top. It is still within the section and column, but the negative value literally pushed it away. Now if I put this to be 0, and we now do the bottom, if I increase that value, all it does is increase the the spacing from the edge of the margin to where the image is, but it doesn't actually take it out of the section. We are still within the section. However, if I was to put a minus in there, can you see that we are now outside of the section? So there's our section, okay, the blue line. We are now slightly out of it. We're still at the top, but we are slightly out of it. And if you mess around with your values, you know, so I might say, okay, let's just put a 56 in here. We are now 56 pixels away from the top, but we are now 56 pixels outside as well. So this is where you might have a bit of an overlap with an image. You know, you might have a square image or a rectangular image or a long vertical image. So this is where it can be of good use to you. Let's just put that to 0, 0, 0. The same goes with the left and rights as well. So if I just type in 100 over there, it pushes it to the 100 pixels away from the left. If I put a negative value in, it's now taking it outside. You're not really going to see it here because we're at the edge of the page, but the section started roughly here. Okay, let me just show you again. Let's just hover over it. Can you see there? There's your section, but the curved bit is already going beyond it. And again, if we go to the right, the same kind of thing. If I do this, it's going to push it 100 pixels away. Let me get this right on my camera, away from the right like that. And if we do a negative value, it is now within the, it's in the section still, but it's now crossing over into column 2. So again, you might have something going on in there, like some wording or another image maybe, and you've got like an image like that, like that, and you got another image. So this one now is just crossing over ever so slightly. Got to get proper shapes here to help show this out. Okay. The padding though, this is where it's now just going to say where does it sit within the column. So if we go over here and I just do say 20, it's now reduced the size, but it has now made sure there's a 20 pixel gap all the way around. You could get rid of that, and you might say I only want to have, you know, on the top and bottom. So if you've got a particular color within your column, you might have shaded it a black color or something, that's now going to sit 20 pixels away from the top and bottom. Pretty simple there. But what happens if I change this to say to be 200 and I put a negative value in? Doesn't really do much, and that's because what I have found is if you are going to start to move it inside or outside of the section or the column, use the margin. The padding is more for what goes on inside. Okay, so I hope that kind of made sense there. If we did though so let me just duplicate this over here. Right, let's get rid of this one here. Let's get rid of it. I can't get rid of it. There we go. Right, we got rid of it. Okay, so we've got two columns, right? I'm just going to take this column here, and I'm going to change the right margin to be I'm going to put 200, and I'm going to put a negative in there. That didn't really do much because the width is so big. So let's just change this to a boxed 600. Okay, right. Okay, and let's just take that image, and there we go. Right, so that image at the moment is going behind column 2 because column 2 was added after column 1. Okay, right? So what's happening is column 2 in terms of hierarchy, is above column 1. If I added another column, so column 3 would be above 2, above 1. But if I want column 1 to be above column 2, what I can do is if I go to the image that's in column 2, I'm just going to put the Z index as 1. You can leave it as blank, by the way, but I like to have control over number settings. So I'm going to call that number 1. I'm going to go to the image in column 1 now. And I'm going to set the Z index to be 2. You see that? Because I'm now telling it that 2 is above 1. So if you imagine you've got 20 images and all of them are overlapping each other in some way, if you think very carefully about how you do it, you could have 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, so you will be able to control the very funky pattern you may want to create. Or not. But I just wanted to highlight to you how you can create that little bit of an overlap effect there, okay? And what I'm going to do, though, is just to make that a little bit clearer. It might help if I just change the image there. That image is a lot higher, obviously, because it's a bigger image, but you can see it's overlapping. And then I would probably go into the styling of this, and I might say, actually, we're only going to make this image be about that big. We're going to leave it as a cover, And what I will do is just, yeah, that's about right. Okay, yeah. But I tell you what, let's just make the background of this section a different color, just so everything becomes a little bit easier to understand. There we go. Okay, so that's where we have the image in column 1. It's got a higher Z class, so it's now above. Okay, let's just go back to our favorite image of the desk. Okay, Paid Membership Pro is a plugin I'm using. You do not get that with Elementor. Okay, so don't go, wow, where is it? I can't see it on mine. Ignore that. Okay, we then have motion effects. Pretty obvious, really. I might say that as the page loads up, this is going to fade in from the left. You could have another image that fades in from the right. I might want to have this fast or super slow. I could even have a delay, so I might even say 2000, so it adds, so when the page loads up, there's like a 2-second delay before it fades in. You could also do a scrolling effect. So as you scroll up and down the page, I might decide as a horizontal, I want the image to go to the right. And if I just set the speed to be about, this one you do have to play about with to get it right, to understand what it is doing. So as I scroll now, you see that? So if I was to just update, okay, and let's just hit return, so this page reloads, okay. It fades in, okay, which is what I expected it to do. And then as I now scroll down the page, it does that. So it might be that you've got some text or an image, the image might be behind the text, or whatever way you want to do it, and you've got some blending going on with overlay or something. And as you scroll down the page, it's going to continue moving. But we could also have it go back the other way. So I could say that for the motion effect, instead of it going to the right, I want it to go to, hold on, going to the right, I want it to go to the left. Okay, so as we scroll now, it goes back the way it came from. So these are some pretty good features. The same with the vertical scroll. So I'm going to set this to be a speed of about 6. So as I now scroll, it goes to the left and it goes up. Or we might say go down. So it's going to go to the left and come down. Can you see that? So there are some things you can do there. I'm going to undo all of that. You can also do transparency, blur. You can even do rotate. So on one website, I had an image of a website, example website on a Mac computer. And as you scroll down, the image basically just rotated. And it just kind of added a little bit of a feature, a nice little gimmick there. I'm just going to turn off scrolling effects. You can do mouse effects as well. So we could do mouse track. So I'm going to say, let's just do that opposite. So as I move my mouse down, it goes up. As I move my mouse up, it goes down. Yeah, you can see what's happening there. Or I could go with direct. So as I move my mouse, it's doing that. Now it won't follow you forever, by the way, okay? It's only going to do it for a bit. And you can actually set it so it's less volatile. You know, if you increase the speed, it will follow you a bit. So just have a think about that. Don't overdo it, okay? Don't, you know, just because there's a fancy feature, don't overdo some things. Okay. There is the 3D tilt version as well, which I don't use much. I haven't really found a massive need to use this yet, but this is just basically where as you move, you can see that it's slightly just tilting in and out. However, if you are showing off a 3D product, that could be quite nice. You know, maybe you got some trainers, a car, a hat, a light bulb, I don't know, but that could be quite a nice one there. We then have the background. Now, if I pick a background type, okay, and I'm just going to pick this picture, it is not going to really do anything. Because look, the image comes in, there's nothing going on there. If I go to the advanced of the image, and I now set the padding of the image to be, let's go with 40, now can you see what's happening? So we got an image, and it was curved, fully contained within itself. I then set a background image. By adding padding, that background image now becomes visible. And what will now happen is anything I've set, so let me just put the motion effects all back on, there we go. It will now work with the motion effects. Not only have I got the background and the image reacting to my mouse, sorry, I said that wrong. Not only is the image reacting to the mouse, so is the background that is set. So it's almost like another feature added in there. But again, don't go too crazy with it. Have a think about what's going to work for you, okay? And if I go back to the background over here, I can change it. So I might say bottom center, so I can change the layout of it. Is it going to repeat? Is it a fixed image? Is it a contained image? How does it work? So look, I have a column, I have an image, and now my image is going to like scroll because the background image for the image is fixed. This is probably overcomplicating things now, but I just want to show you, a lot of people ignore the background for the image because they think, well, I've got an image, what do I need a background for? This is how it can work for you. And let's just go back to the advanced tab, and now let's just set the boundary to be 2 there. Okay. We could do the border again. So if I now go for 500, can you just about see that background image is still in play? Let's make this 20. There we go. So it's quite funky what you can do here. And again, you could set a border as well. So for our image, we might decide that we're going to set a border, and it's doing it around the background because we've added in padding. So bear that in mind. If we have no padding, it will do it on the image, okay? So I'm just going to put a 50 because I just like to be crazy here and just show you what's going on here. You know, whoa, why would you do that? Why would you do this? I just wanted to kind of show you how that's working. And again, you can do a shadow. So I'm just going to increase to the right, increase the vertical so it's going down and to the right, and we're going to make it darker. And we're going to just drop the blur to be about 4. 4, come on. I dropped it to be a 4. Why is it not working? There you go. Oh, it's because I've done it really massive, that's why. Let's just do a 10 and a 10. So there's loads of things you can do here with that. We then have the positioning, and this is where you might decide now, like in terms of like what the layout is. This one for me is more important when you're using text and headers. But let's say we've got 2 images now, so let's just do a duplicate of that. So in the first, let me get rid of this second column. So we've got 2 images above one another because I've duplicated it, okay? If I go into this first image and I go to the positioning, I'm going to say make it an inline. And I'm also going to do the same with this image as well. And I'm going to just say make sure that is inline, which it is at the moment. And what will happen now is if I drop the size of this image, so I'm going to say it's 100 by 100, and we'll do the same for this image as well. Let's just drop the width to be 100 pixels by 100 pixels. What it's now doing, bear in mind that I have messed around with let's just get rid of that right, put that to a 0, okay, and do the same for that one as well. There we go. They're now side by side. So they're within a column, and normally what happens is when you add extra elements, they always go one below another, but by using the positioning and set that to be in line, they'll now be in line. So you could have 4 images in column 1, and they're all side by side one another. So, you know, you might have logos or icons or whatever. I mean, bear in mind though, doing too many inlines isn't great for your performance of your website in terms of speed and rendering and loading. So don't overdo it, okay? And then we have responsive, which obviously, you know, when we start to view it in a mobile mode like this, let's just put it to 378. We might decide that this particular image, we don't want the second image to be visible on the mobile. It will now not be present. So if I do that, it is now not present. Or it could be present. And of course, though, you've got your custom CSS. So there may be some funky code you've collected or got or written yourself that you might want to add into here that's going to make your image do something very, very dynamic. Look, in a nutshell, we just looked at images. We looked at some of the styling. We looked at what we have in the advanced tab as well. I hope that's been useful, and I hope it's kind of shown you things that maybe you've kind of overlooked or not considered about images. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and speak to you soon.